So I'm starting a new project, and for this particular quilt, it's going to be a more masculine color palette. And this will be like my first quilt using like a masculine color scheme. And I'm kind of excited to do it because I'm using a pattern that's still relatively simple, but it has a lot of like details in it, and it uses sashing between the quilt blocks. So let me show you what we're working on today. I'm Carol from Segovia Quilts, and today we are working with Wake at the Lake by Tara Reid for Riley Blake Designs. So again, this is a more masculine kind of collection. And I say that because one, the colors are kind of more neutral and a little bit on the darker side, but then it's also fishing related. And I'll show you, I picked like one focal print for this collection, and it has a lot of like cute designs in it. So it has these little lifesavers, paddles, fish, fishing gear. So to me, it is more masculine. That's not to say women don't fish, but when I look at this particular print and collection, I think more masculine. So these are the fabrics that we're going to be using, and I'll go ahead and open them up and show you each fabric, and then I'll also have the SKU number down there for you. So if you like the prints that I used in today's project, then you can go ahead and get the exact same prints. So let me go ahead and show you the pattern that I've selected for this fabric collection. So I found this pattern on Etsy, and it's called Simply Done, and it's by A Fresh Dewdrop. This is by Anna Furnell from Fresh Dewdrops Quilting. And again, I found this on Etsy, but I'm sure if you go to her website, you can probably buy it directly from her. But this is a pattern that I'm going to use for this fabric collection. Again, it is a relatively simple pattern in that there are no Y seams, there's no curves, there's no partial seams. It's all straight seams, straight sewing, nothing super complicated. But the way it's laid out kind of gives it a more detailed and intricate look. So I really liked that. But I also think this pattern will really allow the fabrics to shine, especially my focal print fabric. So I'm excited to do this pattern with this collection. So something I really liked about this pattern, and I find myself looking for patterns that are more like this, is that this pattern is, it says layer cake, I just call them 10-inch squares. So it is 10-inch square friendly, fat quarter friendly, fat eighth friendly, and again, you can also just use yardage. All right, so let me go ahead and open the fabrics so you can see each of the fabrics we're working with today. So these 8 fabrics here are part of the Wake at the Lake collection. These 3 fabrics here are not part of that collection, but they are coordinating basics. So these 3 fabrics here, let me make sure you can see that. And I'll go ahead and show you a close-up because it's hard to see. Both of these fabrics have a print in it, but it's a little bit hard to see unless the camera's zoomed in a bit. But this fabric here is called Paparazzi Stone. Again, it is a basic from Riley Blake Designs, and this is going to be my backing fabric for once the quilt top is completed. This fabric here is called Texture Cloud. Again, this is also a basic for Riley Blake Designs. I did go ahead and put one of my darker fabrics behind it because it does have a print on it, and because it's such a lighter color, it is a little bit hard for the camera to pick that up. So hopefully you're able to see that print. So this is essentially a white on white, but this is what I'm going to be using for the background fabric of my pattern, and it's essentially the sashing that's going to go between each of our color prints. So all of these little white strips here, I'm going to be using this fabric for that. And then the last fabric that is not part of the Wake at the Lake collection, but it is a coordinating basic, is going to be this beautiful navy fabric here. This actually has the same print as this one right here. Again, this is the cloud. This one is Texture Navy. This again is a basics for Riley Blake Designs, and this is going to be my binding for the quilt. So these 3 fabrics here are not part of the Wake at the Lake collection, but they will match nicely. this pattern, I am using yardage, and I went ahead and I ironed all 8 of my prints, and I went ahead and I cut out the prints and the background fabric. So this pattern is literally 2 blocks. It's like super easy. So this is my print block and then my background block. So these are the 2 blocks that make up this entire pattern, and all we have to do is sew one background to either long side of our blocks. So I'm doing the throw size, which is 59 inches by 76 inches. So I need to sew 2 of my background blocks onto my print blocks, and I need to do that 63 times. So let's go ahead and get sewing. All right, so I've sewn all of my background pieces to all of my print pieces. So I've got all of those here. Now I did go ahead and press all of my seams. So the pattern does say to press all of your seams towards the print. So you want to press your seams inside towards the print fabric, and I did that. So now everything is sewn, everything is pressed. So now we are ready to do the layout for this quilt pattern. So let me zoom in and show you that here. All right, so again, I am doing the throw size. So the layout is 7 by 9 blocks, and it should finish about 59 by 76. So now you can see the layout here. So you want to alternate how you lay out your blocks. So one block, the first block is going to be standing upright, so it's going to be vertical. The second block is going to be horizontal, then vertical, horizontal, and you want to keep going that way until you finish your first row. And then for the second row, you're going to do the opposite. So for the first row, our first block was vertical. The second row, the first block is going to be horizontal. And then you're going to do that throughout the rest of your row, all the way down for all of your columns and your rows. So because we are pressing our seams in towards the print, and the way this pattern goes is you're only going to have seams lining up here in the corners. So you're not going to have to worry about seams between the print fabric and the background fabric. You're not going to have to worry about those seams right here. Only going to have to worry about it in the corner. So we're going to go ahead and lay out the quilt top. And because I have 7 prints here, I want to try and make sure that my colors and my prints are pretty well evenly spaced out. So like, for example, I wouldn't want 2 of my navy blue blocks right together, or 2 of my like teal blocks right together. So when I'm doing my layout, I am going to be mindful of where my colors are, and then I'm going to try to keep my patterns a little bit spaced out. So now I do have 2 wave patterns, and I have 4 of these, I don't know what kind of pattern. I mean, I want to say like a fence pattern. I've got 4 of those. So it's going to be hard to keep those. I'm not going to be able to keep them apart, but I will do my best to keep the colors nicely spaced out. So I'm going to go ahead and start laying out my quilt top.
I know a place where we can go and be alone. So come away with me, nobody has to know where we gonna go. I was just calling to see if you're free to run away with me, to run away with me. Don't tell your friends, we'll let them know we're safe later on. The road's calling.
Alright, so I've got everything laid out. I tried my best to make sure I kept my colors nicely spread out throughout the quilt top. It is a little difficult just because I am only working with 8 colors and we have so many rows and columns, but I think I got it nicely spread out. And if you're not sure, like especially with my floor being a dark brown, and me having a dark brown fabric in my quilt top, it did make it a little difficult just to kind of really see where things were. So if you're ever not sure, take a picture of your layout, and I did that here, so let me show you my picture on my phone. So I took a picture of my layout, and something about seeing it on your phone or on a camera laid out, you're able to see things differently than when you're actually looking at it like with your naked eye. I don't know what it is about looking at a picture of what you're looking at in front of you that really kind of helps you see where things are. But I took a picture. I think I like where everything is. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with this layout. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and start sewing all of my rows and columns together. So let's go ahead and do that.
Skin, sleeping under stars when it's gone. I was just calling to see if you're free to run away with me, to run away with me, to run away with me.
All right, so I've sewn all of my blocks together, and now I have long rows. So now all I need to do is sew those rows together. So now when you sew your blocks together, the pattern does say to press your seams towards the vertical block. So for instance, like this block right here, I pressed the seam, that seam right there between those two blocks, I pressed it towards this block right here. And then like for this block right here, I pressed the seams towards that brown block right there. So now I need to sew all of my rows together, and then the directions say for those seams you want to press them open. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all of these rows together and press my seams open. All right, so I've finished piecing the quilt top together, and I'm going to show it to you now. So now the next step is getting the backing fabric ready for quilting. So for my backing fabric, I am using yardage, but it is not a wide back. So it is your standard 44 inches by however many yards you get. And because of that, I will have to piece my backing. So I will be using a Riley Blake Basics. So this is from the Paparazzi collection, and this is the stone color. So my quilt top should measure about 59 by 76, way bigger than your standard yardage is. So I will have to piece my backing, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that ready now. All right, so I've got my backing fabric pieced. I pressed my seam open, and that is ready to go. So now the last thing I need to do before I can start quilting this is pick out my quilting pattern. So because the fabric line is called Wake at the Lake, to me, I'm thinking, you know, fun times at the lake, fishing, canoeing, skipping rocks, stuff like that. So I went online to Urban Elements, and I found this super cute pantograph pattern. So this pattern is called Loon Lake, and it is a 10.5 inch wide pattern. I think this is the biggest pattern that I have used from Urban Elements, or well, really anybody, and it is 4 sheets of paper long. So you can see it here. So I picked this, again, I feel like it goes perfectly with the fabric collection Wake at the Lake. It has this little bird here, it has this, I'm assuming this is a duck, or this is a loon. One of them is a loon, and I know it's a bird, but I don't know which one. So one of these is a loon, and then we've got a canoe and a paddle here. And we have a couple of trees, and then, you know, our little water lines here. So I thought this pattern would be perfect for this particular fabric collection, and I think because it is such a large pattern and our quilt blocks are relatively large, I think we'll be able to see this pretty well on the quilt. So this is the pattern that I picked for it, and I did the self-print or print at home version of this pattern. You can get it electronically, you can also get it in the paper pattern, but they can mail it to you. And that one, I believe, is 144 inches long, and you don't have to worry about taping the sheets of paper together or anything like that. But I'm impatient, I wanted it today, so I printed it, and this is what it looks like after you have pieced it together. What it looks like before this is right after I have printed it. And I just wanted to show you, in case you've never had to piece a pantograph yourself, this is what it looks like. And let me zoom it out here for you. All right, so these are the 4 sheets of paper that make up essentially one section of this pattern. So over here it says overlap page 2 here. On this side you have a dotted line and it says cut along the dotted line, overlap page 3 here, cut along this dotted line, overlap page 4 here, cut along this dotted line. So this is what it looks like when you print it out. And then once you get everything cut, this is what it'll look like. And then from here, it's just a matter of lining up the lines from one paper to the other paper. And once you are happy with the placement, then you just tape it down. And then once you do that, it'll look like this. So I tape the front and the back because I roll up my pantograph patterns, and if you roll it and you didn't tape the back, then you end up having like this weird piece of paper sticking out kind of like this, and then you have to make sure you don't crease it or crinkle it while you're rolling it. So I make sure to tape the front and the back, but again, if you don't want to deal with that, you can order the paper that they will mail to you, and then you don't have to worry about doing any of this. So I'm going to finish getting my pattern ready, and then we can go ahead and start quilting this quilt top.
So run away with me. Away with
So I've completed the quilting for our quilt top here, and hopefully you can see that a little bit in the camera. Let me see if I can zoom in for you and you can see a little bit of the details. So obviously I'll show you the completed thing once the binding is on and everything, but this is what it looks like so far. And let me turn it a little bit so you can see. I know that navy fabric can be awfully dark, but like, look at how cute this little canoe and the paddle or the oar looks. I think this came out super great. So the thread that I used for the top of our quilt is Wonderful Finesse. Now this is a variegated thread, and hopefully you can see that here. There we go. So this is a variegated thread. So this has several different colors throughout the thread, and I thought the coloring was perfect for our quilt top. So let me zoom it back out here, and we'll kink you back over. So the colors in this thread were like spot on for this fabric collection. So I'm gonna try and get it so you can see it. Here, I guess I'll zoom back in. All right. So right here we've got a dark, well, it's kind of a little bit of a light blue, and it goes into a dark blue, and then it goes into a teal or green color, which is just a little bit lighter than this fabric right here. And then it goes into a little bit of a lighter teal, and then back into the light blue, and then the dark navy blue here. So it was perfect coloring for this fabric collection, so I used that for our top thread. And then for our bottom thread, this is Omni Thread by Superior Threads. So this is essentially just a khaki or a brown or a tan color here. So now it's a little bit more noticeable here on the front of the quilt, but this was in our bobbin, so that's what I used here on the back side. And I think it blends in pretty darn good. This fabric here does have essentially like polka dots or spots throughout, so it pretty much blends right in. And hopefully you can see the quilting there a little bit. Let's see if I can zoom out, and then you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So probably over here you can see, now I know it's upside down, but we've got our birds, we've got our little grass here, we've got, let me find a canoe for you. So I don't think there's one visible here. Maybe you can see this one right here. You can see our little canoe here. So yeah, I think it came out great. I think the thread colors were perfect. And I think the pattern, the Loon Lake, I think it was a perfect pattern for this particular fabric collection, the Wake at the Lake. So now what we have left to do is put our binding on. So before we can put our binding on, I do need to actually cut and then sew and then press all of our fabric to make our binding. So that is what this last piece of fabric is. So this is a basics for Riley Blake Designs. So now this comes from the texture collection, and this is called Navy. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up my strips to make my binding. I will be doing 2.5 inch strips, and then I'll sew them all together on the diagonal, so I will miter them together, and then I'll press them, and then we can go ahead and get our binding sewn on. Alright, so here is the completed quilt, and I think it is super cute. I think the size is perfect, so this is the throw size of the Simply Done pattern. The throw size does measure 59 by 76, so this is a nice size quilt. Again, the fabric collection that I used for this quilt is called Wake at the Lake. It is by Tara Reid for Riley Blake Designs. This is the first quilt that I have done in a more masculine colorway, if you will. Normally, most of my quilts, if it's not for a client, it tends to be a little more on the feminine side as far as the colors go. This one, again, is my first time doing a more masculine quilt, and I really like how it came out. And I think the block size of the Simply Done quilt pattern really works well with the fabrics from the Wake at the Lake collection, because it allows like this focal print here to really shine, whereas if it was smaller blocks, I wouldn't be able to get as much of the details in this particular print into a smaller block. So I do like that the blocks on this pattern are larger and really lets the fabric stand out. So I did use yardage to make this quilt, but the Simply Done pattern is 10-inch square friendly, it is fat quarter friendly, it is fat eighth friendly, and obviously it is yardage friendly. So you could use either a fat quarter bundle, a 10-inch stacker bundle, or you could buy yardage of the specific prints that you want to put this quilt pattern together. So the fabrics that I selected from the Wake at the Lake collection, I only selected 8 prints. There are 16 total prints for this collection, so what you see here is only half of the possible options that you could get from this particular collection. So if you're interested in getting either the fat quarter bundle or the pattern, or if you're interested in any of the threads that I used for this particular quilt, I do have everything linked in the description down below, so make sure to check that out. If you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel yet, please make sure you do so by hitting the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later.